So I get a lot of comments asking why I mainly reference Christianity. Um, Mostly on my other account, since this account has barely existed, but just throughout my internet presence of talking about religion, that's a very common question I get from people who are religious but not Christians. The reason I do this is just because Christianity affects me the most. I have heavily researched Christianity. I have read multiple versions of the Bible. My father's side is evangelical. It's just something I'm exposed to and have a lot of knowledge on because I researched it more because it affects me more. However, I do want to point out my anti-theism and distaste for religion is not just applied to Christianity. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about Eastern religion, predominantly Jainism and Buddhism. Buddhism because my brother is actually a Buddhist, so I do have, I guess, a kind of personal reference to ask questions to. And Jainism because as a vegetarian who wishes I could be vegan but can't for health reasons, Jainism is extremely fascinating to me, and I feel like this is a good opportunity to learn more about it. And as I have done such, as much as I think Jainism is certainly the most peaceful religion just by its nature, there are things I've learned about it that do rub me the wrong way. And regardless, belief without proof is not good. So to start out, neither of these religions believe in a god. They do both have essentially enlightened figures. In Buddhism, it's obviously the Buddha. And in Jainism, there are 24 people of a word I cannot pronounce but will put on the screen who have supposedly reached enlightenment. According to some ex-Jains, who I will link a video below, by Hemant Mehta, who is an ex-Jain, who's also a blogger and YouTuber, at least in Jainism, or at least in this one person's experience and the experience of people around him, these enlightened figures were treated similar to gods and were prayed to and were considered and treated in the way that a monotheistic religion would treat a god, although they are not gods, they just hold a similar position. Although obviously not in the sense of a creator, but in a enlightened person or being. Both of these religions hold the idea of karma, which also comes along with reincarnation, both of which I have an issue with. I am going to start out with karma. I'm sure most people know what karma is, at least in a colloquial sense. But karma is the idea that if you do something harmful, that thing will affect you in the future, essentially. And in the sense of reincarnation, it will affect your enlightenment, your ability to escape the reincarnation cycle and become enlightened. In very simplistic terms, I'm sure it's much more complex than that. Putting aside the idea that karma is supposed to affect you in regards to reincarnation and enlightenment, which I will get to, who determines what's good and bad? Because even within both of these religions, there's no god to determine these things. So while I would still have an issue if there were a god for a different set of reasons, this is a very subjective matter, especially within a religion that does not have an exact higher power. For example, a doctor performing an abortion. In Jainism, abortion is not allowed. It is considered killing something. And basically, a doctor performing an abortion to a Jain would be seen as a bad thing, a thing that gives you bad karma. But to me, a doctor performing an abortion would seem like a good thing. He's doing his job and he's helping someone. So what to them determines that abortion is a bad thing? What is the standard at which this is set? Obviously, their general thing is do not harm any being. There are different levels of essentially based on how many senses this being has and a lot of more complexities than that. But essentially, it's a pacifist religion. So what's determining to them that the life of the fetus is more valuable than the life of the mother because you're not proactively taking something's life? You can argue if a fetus is alive, but that's a topic for another time. Because to me, I say a loose utilitarian. Utilitarianism has issues, but for the most part, I consider myself a utilitarian. To me, performing an abortion causes the least harm, because the mother, it's her body, and she is choosing to do this thing because it's what's best for her, regardless of if she just doesn't want a kid, she thinks she'd be a bad mother, she has genetic issues, it could harm her to give birth or have a C-section, whatever reason, she's doing what she wants to do with her body, and I think it's a positive that a doctor is helping her do that. And I base that on my subjective view of morality. But in a belief system where objective morality does exist and there is no God to prescribe this morality, where does it come from? It's an empty hole that I think really, I don't even think it needs to be filled. I think it just needs to be abandoned and be more rational. And then, of course, I also have an issue with reincarnation, as there is no proof of that, which is, again, my main issue with religion. There is no proof that reincarnation will happen, just like there's no proof of heaven or hell. I have just as much of an issue with reincarnation as I do with the idea of heaven and hell, because both of them are equally unsubstantiated and untrue to the best of our understanding and knowledge right now. Now, I will say, I think the levels of harm religion does is a scale. I think, for example, evangelicals are insurmountably more harmful than Methodists. And I think, for the most part, Jains are the least harmful religion that I personally am aware of. There are issues. There's the abortion issue. There are some misogynistic teachings. They do a lot of fasting. There was an incident where a 13-year-old girl passed away due to the fasting. Some Jains will not take antibiotics because it's an antibiotic. It's killing microorganisms, although that seems to be a personal decision, as Jainism does not have a holy book, but rather two different sets of vows that they take, essentially. There's also an issue with sexual repression. They take a vow of celibacy until marriage, although thankfully they are not like a lot of Christians within sex is only for procreation, even if you're married, which can lead to a lot of frustration and pent-up feelings and just generally unhealthy mental health whenever you are sexually repressed until you get married, as well as the thing that tends to happen within Christianity, where people will get married as soon as they find someone they sort of like, just so that they can have sex. See Girl Defined. So I do see some issues within the theology and morality of Jainism. But in reality, those are so minor compared to Christianity, compared to Islam, that I pretty much put Jainism at the base level of it's harmful because it's belief without proof. Maybe a little more harmful than something like witchcraft or Wicca specifically, because it does promote celibacy and anti-abortion sentiments. However, I still would like to point out that there are religions I personally consider much less harmful, like Jainism, like Buddhism, like Judaism. Things that, to me, their harm mostly comes from belief without proof, more than it does anything else. So next I'm going to go into Buddhism, which I actually know less about, despite my brother being a Buddhist. Mostly just because Jainism is more interesting to me personally. However, they do share some commonalities, things like reincarnation, the concept of karma, as well as dharma, which supposedly explains my issue with there not being a higher power to ascribe this morality, although really just saying it's the nature of the universe is not a good explanation to me, because who determined that? We already talked about that. Just I will say, within Buddhism, there is not a conclusive or, I guess, general thing that everyone believes about abortion. A lot of more traditional Buddhists will say that because it's intentionally destroying a life, again, arguing if it's even considered a life is another topic, is wrong. But also with more modern or secular Buddhists, it is considered a non-issue. So it really is less concrete than in Jainism, which is something I can give it praise for. Overall, as far as I'm aware, the theology, though not the same, is similar enough that I'm not really going to go into it. It maintains the concept of karma in relation to reincarnation and enlightenment. Buddhism has something called the Four Noble Truths. I am not going to try and pronounce their proper names. I will butcher them, but I will put them on the screen. But essentially meaning suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path to the cessation of suffering. The last of which essentially meaning or being the middle way, which is what the Buddha taught, are the steps to achieve enlightenment. There are two main groups of Buddhism that are common in different areas. Again, I don't even know how to read these names. They will be on the screen. But the first of which emphasizes the role of people who achieved enlightenment, and the other one more focusing on lifestyle and meditation as a way to enlightenment. From my understandings, Buddhism has a much less strict set of rules. However, neither of these religions have a full or exact holy book like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, many other religions. However, regardless of this, I maintain the issues with Buddhism that I do with Jainism because, again, belief without proof. Overall, personally, I maintain that both of these religions and religions with similarities to them are much less harmful than basically monotheistic religions. I still think there are things that are below them in terms of harmfulness, again, like Wicca or just general spirituality, deism, non-religious pantheism, etc., things of that sort, things that are less organized and don't have exact rules. Although, again, I still don't think those things are positive, as they are, again, maintaining belief without proof. This will probably be one of, if the only video that I do talk about these things in, unless I can get my brother to come in and maybe talk about Buddhism. I hope that was informative, both about the religions themselves and my stance on them as an anti-theist. Thank you for watching. Don't crucify me in the comments just because I don't like your religion. Thanks.
I stare at the populace in prayer.